Good evening and welcome to Method in Madness. Today we're going to talk about our child and her rights. At Joy of Drama and in all our Method in Madness programs and episodes, child has been the center of attention and of our conversation. And when children are why we are over here speaking every week, having a conversation every week, it becomes very important for us to be aware of their security, their rights. And now that everything is online, it becomes more important that we look at child security. Today with us, we have Prabhsahay Kaur. Prabhsahay is an independent litigator. She has a successful private practice and she has been appointed the Standing Counsel for DDA, Additional Standing Counsel for Government of NCT, New Delhi, and Counsel for the North Delhi Municipal Corporation. She has been associated for over a decade with Shri Kailash Satyarthi, Nobel Peace Prize laureate, organization Bachpan Bachao Andolan, as their retained counsel in the Delhi High Court and Supreme Court. She has represented BBA in scores of public interest litigations. Ms. Kaur is currently representing BBA on the Committee for Reforms in Criminal Laws set up by the Ministry of Home Affairs, GOI. She has been dedicated to the social cause of prevention of child labor and bonded labor, prevention of children in sexual offenses, human trafficking, victim compensation, and protection under POCSO. She has also written voraciously on these issues. Welcome, Prabhsahay. Am I audible to you, Prabhsahay?
Yes, Vaishali ji, your voice is breaking up, but most of it I can hear.
Okay, all right. How is it now? Is it all right? Is it still breaking?
It's better. It's better now.
All right. Okay.
Now it's better.
All right. Thank you for coming to our show. It's real privilege to have you. And you are the first lawyer on this show. And I have been really wanting to talk about child security and child protection, because that is extremely important when we are working with children as teachers and also as parents. I always wonder how aware are we about child's rights and protection, which are there legally in prescribed, and what are the different first steps that we can take whenever we are faltering at it or we see somebody else doing that. So a lot of topics of conversation today we have in front of us, Prabhsahay, and we usually have teachers and parents coming in for our show. And from all over India. So all of us will be very, very happy to know more about how can we help children around us be more free, at the same time protected. So my first question to you is, what do you think this whole notion about child's rights is with people that you meet on a day-to-day basis? How aware are we, really?
Right. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. And I am a lawyer, but today I'm representing all children. So if there are children who've joined into your show, I'm here as your speaker today. So yes, so when we talk about child rights, very interestingly, so the fountainhead of rights in our country is our constitution. And the constitution starts with we the people. We presume as adults that we the people means only adults. Whereas when we talk about we the people, it is inherently also including children. We normally, as adults, as parents, as elders, we keep children always on our mind when we are discussing issues and things in their future, but we don't, without realizing it, we don't take them as equals. Somehow, without realizing it, we treat them as our property, as our chattel. You will get a right when you turn 18. Just because a child can't vote doesn't mean he has any lesser right in decision making. Of course, it depends on the upbringing that the child is given. But very rarely does everyone in homes treat a child as an equal. So when we talk about child rights, it's important for us to say that not only do children have a special place in the Constitution, in statutes, and of course we can talk about specific child rights, but we have to also realize that all the rights that we inherently enjoy, the right to equality, the right to life, most importantly, the right to freedom of speech and expression, they inherently also apply to our children.
So what are these rights? I mean, we have an idea of it usually, as lay people, as parents who are now suddenly, exposed to a lot of internet education. Everything is online at the moment. Are there new laws or new guidelines which have come for children, or have they always been there and we were never aware of it? I mean, what are the rights? What are the concerns that?
Right. So at the risk of sounding boring, I'll start listing some of them out. If it gets too technical, please stop me.
Sure.
So let's start with, as I mentioned, the Constitution. And the first thing is the right to life. Now, the right to life through the years is dynamic as a concept. And the Supreme Court and the high courts in our country have interpreted right to life in many different ways. So, for instance, something as basic as right to water, right to clean air, right to shelter, right to privacy on the internet. These are all a part of right to life, which have developed down the ages through judge-made law. Then we talk about the right to equality, also a fundamental right. And interestingly, even though right to equality is a fundamental right, and there is a right against discrimination on the basis of religion, caste, creed, race, or sex, there is a special category for women and children. So women and children are always treated as a separate category even when it comes to equality. But now we need to ask ourselves, how much of that do we actually implement in our homes? Then is the right to freedom of speech and expression, Article 19. Article 21A is the right to compulsory and free education for every child in the age group of 6 to 14. Now, this is something which was there in the Constitution, but it was implemented by way of a statute in 2013. And of course, it's an inherent right now. Every child is entitled to an education. Many a times, the government is only able to implement this through through government schools. You don't have a right to be admitted to a specific private school, but education is through government schools. Then we have freedom from trafficking, begging, and forced labor. Now you'll ask me that everywhere we go we see begging, but there is a constitutional right that the child has against begging and against forced labor and trafficking. Article 24 says that no child can work in any hazardous industry. So there is a separate statute on child labor, but by way of the Constitution, under 14 years, a child cannot work at all. Then is the right to freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, and free profession and practice of religion. Again, how many of us actually give our children this right? So the reason I'm saying these is because as adults, we take these for granted.
Yes,
but,
we do.
But somehow we don't offer the same freedom to our children. Now, I'm not proposing that you ask a 2-year-old child whether you want to follow this or that religion, but somewhere down the line, the need to realize that these rights exist not only for us but for our children is important. Then children also have a right to legal aid. So every district in every state has what is called a Child Welfare Committee. Now, the Child Welfare Committee is a committee of persons who are specialized to deal with children. Now, every child who is put up before the Child Welfare Committee, which is quote unquote a child in need of care and protection, and that can be any kind of child in need of any kind of care and protection, that child is entitled to a lawyer. So he's entitled to free legal aid. So for all you know, a child can very well go to a child welfare committee and say, I want a lawyer because my mother has slapped me without any reason. So this is there on paper. And I hope we can see a time when we see more of children actually realizing that, yes, I have this right, and enforcing it in some way. Then Article 45 gives the right to early childhood care. Now, this is more of a responsibility in the government, the right to nutrition and early childhood care. In our country, there are what are called Anganwadi centers.
Yes.
So in Anganwadi centers, mothers or families who have to go to work or who are not in a position to care for their children are entitled to send their children below the age of 6, and everything from food to nutrition to midday meals to milk to medicines to early learning is to be taken care of at the Anganwadi centers. Then we've got the JJ Act has a number of rights. For instance, a right against cruelty, and cruelty has a very wide definition, because it doesn't only include that it's not just that you can't beat up the child, but it's also a right against abandonment and a right against physical or mental trauma. So a child, that is an inherent right of the child against cruelty from his parents. But unfortunately, what we've seen in India is that no parent feels that, if I beat up my child, child protection services will take away my child. That is the kind of jurisprudence that we hope will develop through the years, because parents need to stop thinking that the child is their property and they can deal with him the way they want to.
Yes. Also, there is a huge, a mockery kind of a, environment which is created around this whole thing of, how in the West, children can go up and exercise these rights. And, there's always this funny joke that goes around among parents and elders and adults, I would say, that when Indian children fly out from US to India, and the moment they enter India, the parent beats the child up. And it's so lightly, enjoyed, this joke. I mean, I've always found this a little odd, because really, are we that desperate as parents to really hit our children to get them sorted as such? So I think I also wonder if the parents ourselves, like we adults, are aware of our own rights, because I think once we are aware of our rights and we exercise them and we kind of practice them, it becomes more easy for us to understand what our children's rights are. I mean, women and children, yes, I'm aware of the fact that women and children have a separate category altogether, because I have been reading lately on this. But do we mothers really know? Do our teachers who are also mothers know that what their rights are? I mean, I think somewhere, I don't know what you feel about it and what has been your experience with mothers and parents. Do you think they are, we as adults are aware of our rights? How much?
Not really. So when you talk about women, normally women see themselves in the capacity of a wife. So while women might be more aware than they were a decade earlier of their rights against dowry or sati or child marriage or, the things which were very blatant. But I don't think anyone thinks of rights as a mother or rights as a daughter as much as they just think of their rights as a wife. So we need to actually pause and think of right, or even as a woman, like you might have women who might be asserting their right as a woman and at a workplace, but we don't look at it as according to the different roles that we play, which is something very important. Now that we were talking about cruelty, if you don't mind, I'd like to read the provision, because sometimes something when we hear it exactly as it is, it has a different impact. So just excuse me, I'm going to read the whole provision. Punishment for cruelty to child. Whoever having the actual charge of or control over a child assaults, abandons, abuses, exposes or willfully neglects the child, or causes or procures the child to be assaulted, abandoned, abused, exposed, or neglected in a manner likely to cause such child unnecessary mental or physical suffering, shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years, or fine of rupees 1 lakh each. So I wanted to read this. Look at how wide the definition is. And it's not like it's come today. It's been around for donkey years. But how many people know about it?
Let's talk about the online safety and the online securities in place, and how concerned should we be as teachers, because we had this discussion before we did this. We came into this conversation. As a teacher, I'm scared to put my children's photographs online, but I see other people do it. Because I don't know whether I should or not. Is it violating their privacy? Because right now, we are into children's bedrooms, their drawing rooms, and we are in their homes. So as a teacher or as a parent, when we put up, photographs or videos of our children doing classes, is it all right? Maybe ethically not, but is it legally okay or not?
Right. So we're talking about two statutes when we talk about what parents and children should particularly be careful of. One is the Information Technology Statute, which deals with everything online, and the other is POCSO. And I'd really like to talk about prevention of sexual abuse in children. I'd like to talk about these two. Now, when we talk about information technology, this is a statute which is applicable to everyone. So it's not like there are provisions except for one provision which is specific to children. So let me just quickly take you through it, and then we'll talk about some examples or instances. Sure. Of course, hacking is an offense, and on hacking, a person is entitled not just to damages but also to compensation according to the loss that has been suffered. Sending offensive messages is an offense punishable with 3 years. Identity theft is an offense. Now, I wanted to specifically talk about both of these because, I see children are growing up very fast. And we may not have spoken to our friends the way children speak to their friends these days. Much less the way you might have spoken to your friends, or our parents would have spoken to their friends in their
friends.
Yeah, exactly. Their friends, sorry. So somewhere these lines are getting blurred. And when these blurred lines are going to become an offense, we somehow are not mindful of it. So when I wanted to talk about sending offensive messages, I've seen children loosely using the word rape. How is that even possible? How can you use a call? They just they want to call each other's names. They call each other rapists. It's not okay. Yeah. And they need to be told somewhere. As teachers, we need to tell them that, look, you cannot use terminology like this. It amounts to sending an offensive message. It can be punishable. You can't threaten someone as a joke with rape. It doesn't work like that. Then identity theft. I've commonly seen these days people on social media and children having multiple accounts, or as a joke just making their friend's account. You put up a friend's photograph and you make that person's fake account. It's identity theft. So they need to know what are the repercussions of it. Then violation of privacy. If anybody transmits any photograph of someone's private areas, like a photograph taken in a bathroom or otherwise, that's an offense. Pornography or transmission of it is, of course, an offense. Transmission of any sexually explicit act is a very serious offense. And so this, with respect to a sexually explicit act or conduct, for children, there is a separate provision and the punishment is much higher. So where a child is involved in a sexually explicit act, then it is a much more serious offense. Now, this is also something that, if you'll allow me, I'd like to read out because it has a very wide definition. And, sometimes when we hear the title of something, it doesn't hit us as much as when we hear the content of it. So I'm just going to quickly read this out. It says punishment for publishing or transmitting of material depicting children in sexually explicit act in electronic form. Whoever A, publishes or transmits or causes to be published or transmitted material in any in any electronic form which depicts children engaged in a sexual explicit act or conduct, or creates text or digital images, collects, seeks, browses, downloads, advertises, promotes, exchanges, or distributes material in any electronic form depicting children in obscene or indecent or sexually explicit manner. Please mark the words obscene, indecent. They're very gentle
Indecent.
in the terminology.
Mm.
And cultivates, entices, or induces children to an online relationship with one or more children for and on sexually explicit act or in a manner that may offend a reasonable adult on the computer resource. This will include chat rooms. It will include just messaging on Facebook or
Snapchat.
Instagram,
Yeah.
Snapchat. Facilitates abusing children online, or records in any electronic form own abuse or that of others pertaining to sexually explicit act with children will be punished. And recently, in fact, we've been working very hard on this. What we had seen is when it comes to child pornography, the damage is done if something comes on the internet. So we have been working very hard on increasing the responsibility of intermediaries under the Act. So intermediaries is like Google or Airtel or Reliance or whoever is enabling for that to come on the internet. In 2020 itself, during COVID, we had put up this suggestion before the Ministry of IT, and they made a change in their draft rules. And now there is more responsibility to the intermediaries, such that their responsibility is not limited to removing the material. They have to ensure that it never goes there in the first place. So when it comes to child pornography, this is the only specific area in which their responsibility being so augmented is accepted. Everywhere else, our intermediaries say, freedom of expression, freedom of speech. But this is something where they didn't say that. Then in IPC, cyber stalking is an offense. So monitoring a woman on the internet. Now, this is very strange, but it's only a man to a woman, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So only a man can stalk a woman according to our law. But stalking on the internet is an offense. And then before we go to POCSO, so that's pretty much what in the IT Act. So, why I read these out was because you'll see that they are, again, very general in their terminology. And therefore, while we must respect our children's privacy, it's important for us to ensure that these things are part of our conversation with them, or just general conversations, so that they realize that if an adult is responsible, you're equally responsible. So if you want the responsibilities of an adult, then you also have the duties of an adult. So that is this is something that we must speak to our children about. The other act is POCSO.
But now, before we go there, Prabhsahay, if you could just help me clarify this thing about children who are below 14 and below 12 having WhatsApp accounts and having Facebook accounts, because I see many of my students who are below 12, they have their own phones and they have their own WhatsApp and they are managing their own classes there. So one is, it makes life simple. It makes life easy for the parents also, to an extent that, okay, you are handling your own thing, you have your own phone number and your own WhatsApp. But having said that, is there, a legal offense if I'm 14 and I have an Instagram account? If I'm 12, I have a WhatsApp account. Okay. And if I do, then what are the things that parents need to be careful of, especially, sharing photograph, using a DP, display pic, or, sharing content? If you can just throw some light on both these aspects.
Sure. So, yes, another part of the question that you had also earlier asked is to do with sharing photographs, etc., of children. So, with regard to that, there's an act called the Juvenile Justice Act. Now, the Juvenile Justice Act defines a child. In fact, Indian law defines a child as under the age of 18. So it
Yes.
is 18 that is the important age that we are looking at. Now, for a child under the age of 18, there isn't an explicit bar as to sharing photographs, etc., unless it falls in any of these categories.
Hmm.
And the exception being that there are children who are called, as I mentioned earlier, in need of care and protection. So, for instance, a POXO victim, or an orphan child, or an abandoned child, or children that are there in children's homes, or a child who is rescued from child labor. So, a child who's vulnerable and in the need of care and protection, that child has a right to prevent his identity from being disclosed. So, the right to confidentiality. So, Section 74 of the JJ Act says that his identity will not be disclosed in any manner. Now, other than that, there is no legal bar. Having said that, all of these accounts that your portals that you're talking about, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, they all have their privacy policies. And I'm not very active on social media. I only know about Instagram. But I have seen in Instagram's privacy policy that it's under the age of 18. That's one. Number two, nobody bothers to read privacy policy. But
Yes,
if you will
nobody
read
does.
it, if a parent will read it, they are very particular about children not accessing it. So if you are giving your child access, then you have to see that it might not be an offense, but it is a risk that you're taking. And it is something that you will have to yourself monitor. So, I mean, this is really a parenting question on whether a child should or should not have access to it. But legally, if a privacy policy is saying that you should not, that a child below 18 can't make an account, then that should mean something.
Yes, right. We were also wondering, as teachers, I mean, we have these conversations with our fellow teachers and parents about how to be careful when the child is doing a class online, because right now we see a lot of bullying happening online, especially teenagers, where definitely there's cyberbullying, but there is like peer bullying, where children are taking screenshots of their friends doing maybe a physical activity, and then that thing goes out, it spreads out. So there's a lot of fear of getting bullied. Are there any laws against bullying in our constitution? And if you could talk a little bit about cyberbullying and what should be the red flags, when we can take an action.
To be honest, if it is a peer to another peer, most of these acts and most of these statutes, even POXO, when it comes to the accused also being a child, the dynamics slightly change. Okay. Because a child cannot be, even if a child is an accused, he can only be tried by the Juvenile Justice Act. So he is, and by what are called juvenile justice boards. He is never taken to a court. Right. So an exception in that way is there for when a child is doing an offense against a child. Personally, my suggestion would be to start with the point of counselors of the school. Take it up at the school's level. And it's very important for, I understand that all schools have counselors. And if that's not the case, then parents must take it up with the school because they have to have them. There are many authorities that one can go to which specializes with children. So while there may not be a separate procedure that is there, but if it is not getting resolved at this stage of the school, then one can try and approach the Child Welfare Committee of your district. And if there are more than one children, or if it is a situation which a school is not addressing, then you can also write to the Directorate of Education. They also take it very seriously. At the end of the day, nobody wants this COVID scenario. But as difficult as it be, if a school is holding online classes and taking fees for it, then the school has to be responsible to prevent a situation that would not have been allowed in a classroom. Right. So let the school take charge of it. And if they are, if the Directorate of Education the school channel doesn't work out and the child welfare committee doesn't take out, then one can always reach out to the DCPCR, which is Delhi Commission for Protection of Child Rights. They have a helpline, or one can make a complaint to the DCPCR, or one can also make a criminal complaint to the police. But I would suggest that these steps should be taken before it comes to that point.
Right. And is there any step that can be taken at a local level? I mean, apart from the Directorate of Education, maybe the school is not listening to it. Are these child welfare committees there in every district, every town? I mean, how are these placed?
Yes.
All over India?
Yes. So every state has what is called a Department of Women and Child Development.
Yes.
And they appoint what are called child welfare committees in every district. Now, Delhi has 11 districts. Currently, it has 10 child welfare committees. Each district has a child welfare committee physically sitting there. And it's a 5-member committee. They have their own office. They have their own paraphernalia. They have everything. So a person can, you will find their numbers online. They are there on Department of WCDs. You can just Google Child Welfare Committees districts, and you'll get the numbers of the members and the chairpersons. You can take their email address and you can send them a written complaint. There is also, if it comes to the point where it has to go to the police, then there is the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal, which gives you also the right to make anonymous complaints. So sometimes you want to report something rather than complain about something. So one can also look at that channel. But I would suggest if on the other side is also a child, it's better to try and get it resolved and then go to the police.
Right. Let's talk about POCSO.
Sorry, Vaishali ji, I missed that.
POCSO. Let's talk about POCSO protection.
Yes. Let's talk about POCSO.
Yes.
So this is a little difficult topic, and I'll tell you why. The cases that I deal with of POCSO are very hard cases. I'll give you an example of one that I'm dealing with right now. So 6-year-old boy was sodomized by his uncle, his bua's husband, 4 to 5 times over an entire period of time. And he did it because he was approaching the boy's mother, and the boy's mother was not responding. And so, as a revenge and as something that he couldn't control, he instead targeted the child. It was done in the child's own house, in the child's room, because he came looking for the mother and he used the child instead. The child didn't tell anyone. And after about 2 months, something, maybe, I don't know what he thought, he took him to a park, the accused, and threatened him with a knife and told him that if you tell anyone, I'll kill both you and your mother. So again, the child did not tell anyone. As luck would have it, and this is the randomest of coincidences, but because the mother of the child had complained to the accused's wife that he's been troubling her, the accused's wife had put a spy camera in their room, and the entire incident got recorded. And of course, when it got recorded and everyone got to know, they all saw it. Thankfully, the mother was strong enough to go to the police. When you're talking about a family member and incest, most people don't come out with the truth. And by that time, so much time had elapsed that this child had completely gone into a shell. He stopped talking to anyone. He was, he used to walk with, he used to constantly be in this posture. He was so scared. And it took us months of counseling to be able to get him out of that fear. He stopped going to school. His mother didn't want to send him to school. She's like, "Main isko bhej hi nahi sakti." And anyway, we got him to a point where he went to court, and he gave a statement better than any adult could have given. He was so good. But these are the kind of hard cases of POCSO that we deal with. But what I've seen on the internet and in general is that there are some very blurred lines when it comes to children consensually having relations with each other. Now, of course, POCSO talks about rape, but the word rape is not used in the act. What's used is called penetrative sexual assault, and that is, of course, rape. But there's also a lower degree of sexual assault. Now, sexual assault is, again, very wide in its definition, and it includes touching a child or making a child touch the person.
Oh.
So on a private part. So it's that's what I'm saying. It's very, if a child might think, this is all I did. I didn't do more than that. So it's important for us to be able to explain to children that this is also sexual assault. Then aggravated sexual assault is a situation where the same act is done. However, it might be done by a group of persons, or it might be done by a person who's in a position of power. Or it might be done in a situation where the child has been intoxicated or drugged in any manner. So the punishment is higher. And then there is also an offense called sexual harassment. Now, sexual harassment is use of any word or gesture or sound that sort of explains or implies a sexually explicit conduct. So doing it yourself or making a child do it, or showing it to a child also, that is amounts to sexual harassment. Then use of child for any kind of pornographic activity. So if two children are choosing to make sexually explicit videos of each other, it will fall in this category. Now, interestingly, POCSO has a provision which puts a mandatory duty on a person to report it. So it says, Section 19 says, any person that has an apprehension that an offense under this act is likely to be committed, or has knowledge that it is going to be or it may be committed, has to inform the police. Now, the police has a specific unit that specializes with women and children. This is called the SJPU, Special Juvenile Police Unit. Each police station is supposed to have what is called a child welfare officer, who is from this SJPU. So these are police officers that are specialized with children. I don't know how specialized they will be, but at least they're not supposed to take a statement of a child in uniform, or they're not supposed to intimidate the child, or they're supposed to be easy with the child. So the child welfare officer is somebody who one can approach. Now, if a person, a teacher or a parent, or even a child has apprehension that an offense under POCSO might be committed with anybody else, other than the police, there are various other authorities that can also be approached. One is, as I mentioned, the Child Welfare Committee. Then, if somebody wants to call the government, there is the Department of Women and Child Development. You can approach them directly. They also have district level officers. Why I'm emphasizing on district level officers is because it's at a local level. They are only responsible for that specific district. So they should immediately come to you when such information is being given or help is being sought. Then is the DCPCR, which is a recommendatory body. They run a helpline. One can call them. Any NGO that deals with children. I work with Bachchan Bachao Andolan. If anybody is looking for help in that regard, I'm more than happy to give their number. And the easiest thing to do is to call 1098. This is the child line run by the government. We have been working for years to strengthen it. And the child line ensures that whatever complaint comes to them with respect to a child, they then send it to the relevant authority. Whether it's the CWC, whether it's the government, whether it's the police, they will take that responsibility. So everyone should have this number 1098, child line. Now, POCSO also says that if a person gives information about an offense that is likely to be committed under the Act, that person is exempted from any civil or criminal liability in good faith. So you don't have to worry that you will get involved in something. So this is something which is very important. Also, Section 21 says it prescribes a punishment for failure to report a case under POCSO. So where a teacher or a school knows that an offense under POCSO has taken place and fails to report it, then that person is exposing themselves to an offense. The exception in this provision is of children. Children are exempted under this section. So if a child has seen an offense under POCSO being committed, that child will not be held liable if he doesn't give information. Then next is punishment for a false complaint. If any person gives false complaint, that he's liable under the Act. This is also there under the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act. But it's a very important provision. If somebody knowingly gives false information, then you are liable under the Act. So these are these are things that parents, teachers, children, everyone is to do. Now, if an offense under POCSO is done by a child with another child, it will still be an offense under POCSO. The only difference will be that the accused, the child, will be tried by the Juvenile Justice Board. He will not be kept in a jail. He will be kept in a juvenile home, which are not very happy to be either. But it's still an offense. So we need to start talking to our children about the kind of pictures that they might be sharing with each other, or the recording of an act that can have sexual overtones. These are things that we need to start talking about.
Right, and also these blurred lines that we are talking about. How blurry are they? I mean, how distinct are they? Are they free to our own interpretation? That is something that we also need to probably have a discussion with the teenagers, because nowadays when I talk to 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, they don't shy away from talking about this, and this is a very good indication that children would like to know more. Have you, in your experience, have you ever been with children where you have had a conversation with them on this, and if they have asked you questions? I mean, it would be interesting to know if you have interacted with children, and what kind of questions do they have?
So Vaishali ji, right. So Vaishali ji, what happens when I say I specialize in child rights, you'll be surprised, but only very hard cases come to us, like the ones that I mentioned. People who are belonging to upper middle class or the higher class, they don't like to talk about these things at all. You will be surprised at the kind of low rate of reporting of sexual offenses of children. It's much lesser than it is even in the lower class. And while children might be open to talking about it, no parent brings a child to a lawyer and says that aap inse baat karo, and that's what I'm saying. We do not treat our children as equals. We don't think that they might need to talk to a lawyer about it. We decide these things for them, or we just feel that we'll tell them how it is and they should follow. So I really hope that that teachers and parents and children who are watching your show, this can just lead to some kind of a change in our opinion, where these become living room conversations. And maybe then a lawyer would be able to tell you that that somebody has come and discussed this with them openly.
Yes, like usually schools organize these. I mean, at least what I remember, our schools, they used to organize these talks with professionals coming in from different walks of life. And sometimes we would talk to a doctor, at times we would talk to a policeman, but I don't actually remember talking to a lawyer. A lawyer never came to a school. At least I studied in 6 different schools. I haven't seen a lawyer in any of them. So as a professional, and if there are other lawyers who are watching, child rights activists and lawyers who are watching, what do you think we can do as teachers and as child rights protection lawyers? Is there a way to collaborate in some way? Or are there already organizations who allow this collaboration to happen, where we can go seek help and then get our children exposed to these kind of conversations? Like, one is definitely this.
On my part,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so one is definitely this show. I mean, I can always share this link with my children, but is there do you perceive something which can be done on a broader scale if given a chance?
Yeah, sure. So I wouldn't take the name of the schools because it won't be proper.
Sure.
But we had actually proposed. So, for instance, Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act. Now, the POSH. This is it's called POSH. So the POSH workshops are held in every company and in many schools. So we had actually proposed that on the same lines as a POSH workshop, schools should allow for a similar kind of workshop where rights of children are being discussed. And I mean, it's an idea that we had proposed. It didn't go anywhere. We had mooted it to some schools, but of course, if that's something that happens, then that's wonderful. But even if that doesn't happen, and maybe a school doesn't want to take a risk, or maybe a parent doesn't want to take a risk that a lawyer comes and says, if your mother beats you up, you can go to XYZ. So maybe that might be a little risky. But beyond that, it's important to just open the discussion. And then if your child comes out with some information or something that they want to talk about, then you can always reach out to a lawyer. So for instance, till probably till last decade, we were alien to the concept of sex education workshops. In fact, we had one. We were one of the earliest. The school that I come from was one of the earliest schools that had it, and we had it in 11th. And it was a little late to have it in 11th, but at least we had it, and no other school had it at that time. And all my other friends are like, "Oh my God, you actually had this thing!" And now the grade at which it happens is much earlier. Now we have the concept of good touch, bad touch being taught to the children. So these things are really good. But there was a need for them. Who thought 20 years back that POXO might be necessary? It's not that children were not abused, but it was definitely not this bad. And we also need to change our thoughts with the times. And when we see that children are becoming more open, they're growing up faster, then the protection that needs to be given to them and the knowledge that needs to be given to them for them to be
needs
safe
to come in.
Also must come. Yes,
must come faster. Great. I think right now we'll just open the discussion and ask our viewers to ask their questions. And if they have any comments that they would like to share, please do so. I have a question, and this comes from a child. She is 11 and a half, I think. And we were doing this drama project where we were talking about cultivation and why cultivation is important. And we looked at a chapter from an NCERT book, class, I think class 4 or 5th. There's a chapter where we talk about cultivation in a village where there's a little boy who's working along with his father to grow onions. Okay, so this was the whole premise of our drama. So I was playing the role of a government official who would come and would, help the villagers. So I came in and I just asked all of them that if there is anything that they would like to tell me, and if there is something that it's concerning to them. So one of the children who was playing this child who was engaged in cultivation, she asked me that I think this is child labor. Isn't it child labor? Because we are growing onions, and I'm made to work in the hot fields with my father. That's fine, but I'm sowing the seeds and I'm plowing the field. So isn't this child labor? So I was stunned because when we do drama, we have to kind of stay in that role and not come out of that role. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get back to you on this. So I never got back to that child, and this is a very good moment for me.
So that answers your question. That answers your question on why no one calls lawyers to talk to their children.
Yes.
So she's right. It is child labor. The only exception is that there is an exception in Child Labor Act which allows in certain situations for children to be involved in the vocation that the parents are there in. But essentially, she's right. And if she went to the extent of asking you, was my father in this drama also a labor, then she would have said, this is bonded labor and there's no way I'm doing this.
Yes. And these are very important questions.
And the next thing you know, she would have said, I'm entitled to 20,000 rupees from the government and all my back wages, so you better hurry up with those.
No, I have to go back and tell her that you're entitled to 20,000 rupees if you have these issues also, that you need resolution to. But I think, yes, it is very important to not shove away these questions, because usually, whenever there's a question that the child raises, and the child could raise a very potentially important question, and we kind of shove it, we put it behind, saying that, okay, it's not important, it's not child labor, you're just helping your dad, and helping is not labor. But at the same time, it becomes very difficult also for the parent to kind of draw that line. The line is also very blurred for the parent.
True.
But
I ask a question to the parents here. If you were to take your child to a dhaba, and you're being served by a very small child, and your child is the one who asks the dhaba owner, ये बच्चा यहाँ पे काम कैसे कर रहा है, ये बच्चा यहाँ काम क्यों कर रहा है, मैं पुलिस को फोन करूं? Would you not be extremely proud? So you see, if we start involving our children as equals and giving them the knowledge that they should have, it will lead to a better society. How many children might actually think that it's very strange, why is that child working and I am the one eating? But if the child has the knowledge that yes, this is child labor, then it'll go somewhere else. It will really lead to our society growing. And there's a very simple answer to the question. As a parent, the child is being forced to work, the child is being made to work, he's not being paid for it. He is not, in fact, getting paid. His parents are probably getting paid for it. His right to a childhood is being snatched away from him. So yes, this is child labor. If you're helping your father or your mother with something, those are chores. That is child labor. Right. So I'm sure there are answers to the questions. And sometimes, even if we're asked difficult questions, I think it's great that they're making us think more.
Yes, it made me call you, Prabhsahay. That question, it bothered me so much. I was like, I have to talk to somebody. And I think everybody needs to listen to this. I also see this, children in upper middle class and, coming from privileged backgrounds, they are growing up with, the house helps. And there's a generation of children who have grown up only with house helps. And they've seen the house helps also grow along with them. So when a child comes back and asks this question to the parent, that why is she, she's so young, she's just, not even 18. Why is Didi with me? How does a parent then, consciously speak? Because, there is no way, there's no escape for it. So have you seen any kind of such situations, or have you met people who kind of go away from this or turn a blind eye to this entire conversation? Because I have to deal with these conversations as a teacher, because they ask me, and because the parents don't want to answer. So, yeah.
I'm glad you've raised this question, Vaishali ji, because this is a question on which I have a vested interest. This is a cause to which I've dedicated my professional life. And we have worked very hard in the past 13 years on ensuring that these so-called placement agencies that traffic girls from all over the country and put them in homes in Delhi and deny them a childhood, that is stopped. In fact, now there are there were always strict laws against it. But your parents, not parents or teachers, anyone needs to know. If you are consciously employing a child below the age of 18, you are committing an offense. There are no two ways to put it. This entire logic of वो तो सिर्फ मेरे बच्चे के साथ खेलता है, वो तो कुछ काम नहीं कराते हम उससे, this is rubbish. If just like you will not condone any other offense, please do not condone this. You want to help sponsor someone's education, please do that. But under the pretext of he's poor, we are helping him, are you going to commit any other offense? Why should you be committing this? So I'm sorry, your children are absolutely right. They're trying to awaken your conscience in this regard, and please listen to them. This is not okay. And we've been working on it, but at least my generation, we don't see this change happening. We can only hope that in the next generation we realize people need to realize that a child has to be left to be a child. Even if his parents are poor, it is not the child's responsibility. The government will give him a midday meal. The government will give him shelter. He's poor. There are schemes that will help the child. You cannot employ the child and become a part to the crime.
Right.
So this is something that we must be very careful about, because when we indulge in this sort of behavior, we are not only are we committing an offense, but we're teaching the children something wrong.
No, and also it makes the child guilty, because the child understands. It's not that the child is, I mean, the child can see he has or she has her own mind to think and decide, critically think. And that's what we are teaching also. I mean, the whole point of education is to help the child think critically. And when the child is thinking critically, if we find ourselves doing something which is not appropriate, definitely there is a repercussion to that. Yes.
And now that you've raised this, sorry, there's another issue to which I would love if somebody else has something to say. Parents and teachers both deal with children in schools who are in the EWS category and in the disadvantaged category. So primarily in the disadvantaged category, there will either be children in the SC/ST class, or there'll be children who are with disabilities, children with special needs. We don't realize that in sometimes the steps we take or the steps that we fail to take, how we discriminate against them. And out of all the offenses that we have spoken about so far, please know that that is also an offense. So keeping a child who is from an economically weaker section and who is from a disadvantaged background, keeping him out of or discriminating against him, that's not okay. It's just not okay. So it might be difficult. I'm sure it's very difficult for teachers, but someday we have to realize that we have to teach our children how to be a part of an inclusive society. And maybe we can't accept it because we were not taught it when we were in our schools, and our children are going to be better human beings than us. But please start teaching them that is those children's legal right. And if you deny them that right, then you're committing an offense.
Yes. On that note, I think I have to thank you, Prabhsahay ji, for doing this conversation, because really, I've been skimming through so many websites and social media portals and YouTube to find something on child protection. It's all, people just checking boxes like this and this. There's never, I've not seen a conversation on it. So I think having conversations and encouraging more conversations as these amongst parents and children and teachers is something that all of us over here would want, to promote and to propagate. And I think today's conversation was really, really beneficial, helpful to not just me as a teacher, but to all teachers and parents who have been with us throughout the evening. Thank you so much, Prabhsahay, for doing this. And I'll get back to you very soon with lots of questions that keep coming from my children.
You're more than welcome. And thank you so much for having me. And I hope this will be the first of many conversations that parents and teachers will start having with their children. And let's take this as a beginning.
Let's take this as a beginning. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. Please do subscribe to our channel. We do such conversations, sometimes difficult, sometimes easy conversations every week. And we try and bring people who are associated with children, work with children, work around children, and look at children as human beings. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Bye.